Hi friends, Road Cyclist, it's Graeme Street, and welcome to a long overdue review of the Veloforma Strada SL, probably one of the nicest bicycles you may have never heard of. And it's unfortunate because I've been riding a bike for 25 years now, and I never heard about Veloforma until the past year. And I quickly asked Josh, who used to work for me for CycleCore, who now works for Veloforma, to get me one of these bad boys as soon as he could. Not only was it a striking looking bicycle, but I've done my homework with the company. And Veloforma is a small Oregon-based company that's worked, much like me, to build up kind of an organic-like cult following for their customers by doing good quality work and delivering on what they promise. And this bike was promised to be, you know, a top of the line, like a Cervelo R5, Cannondale EVO level bicycle at a much cheaper price point and a lot more opportunity to really upgrade so many other key features within a bicycle. You know, if you've been riding a bike for long enough to know that when you spend money on a bike, you know, from the group set to the frame to the drivetrain to the wheels to the tires, every little thing can make a difference, especially the more that you spend. And I gotta be honest, having owned some very expensive bicycles, I'm not gonna name names, I'm telling you right now, very often when I spend a lot of money, like a lot of money on a bike, you don't always get back what you think you should get for that price point. And Veloforma is kind of breaking the mold with that, and that's why I really picked up on them so quickly, is that I knew that they were going to be given an opportunity to get a really good high-quality bicycle for a lesser price. So, enough of the swag about Veloforma. Let's talk about the bicycle. First of all, I mean, it's a really cool paint job how they've set it up. I love the two-tone stuff. I love white bikes. I love black bikes. And the way that Veloforma has set it up as kind of this two-tone is really, to me, is really striking. It's one of my favorite actually painted bicycles I've ever seen. From aesthetics alone, you can see how the ridge here runs clear through the back, almost like a specialized bicycle. That's kind of like the best way that I could describe it, having been on a Tarmac SL. Very similar in how the junctures route through from the top tube through to the rear end of the bicycle. That makes for a really stable platform. I don't know if that's how we intended it, but I can tell you right away that the bike rides. My best explanation for it to compare it to would be it rides like a Cannondale. And if you've ever been on one of the newer Cannondales in particular, what you're going to notice right away is a very stable platform. And when you're riding a bicycle, especially at very high speeds, having a stable platform is ultra important. I know so many of us are only fixated on the weight of the bike, how pretty it looks. And be honest with yourself, you and I both know that how pretty it looks makes a huge difference in whether you buy the bike or not. But beyond that, how stable the bike rides is ultra important. And the way that he has set up the cockpit, the fork, and the rear end of the bicycle, which of course is really the mainstay here for cornering and stability and performance, he's really created, at first, what I would say, and probably why it's taken me so long to do this review, is this is really a racer's bike. Like, if I was going to use this bike for something, I want to get this thing into a crit and lay this thing as hard into a corner at full speed as humanly possible. He's really achieved that with, you know, your now standard 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 front end. Makes for a much stabler platform. Luckily, you know, he has not gone ultra long here in the head tube like many bicycle companies are now, which I am not in agreement with. If you're going to build a race specific bicycle, which again I believe this really is, then the shorter head tube and a little bit more stable platform through the rear end, I believe is going to be a better choice to get you the cornering stability and speed that you're looking for. The fork is absolutely top notch. The quality on this fork, it's a carbon crown, carbon steer tube, really well forked out. I absolutely love this fork. In fact, if I could, I would put this fork on other bicycles of mine. That's how much I like the front end of the bike. To be honest, one of the reasons why it took me longer to do this review is because when I got the bike, I was training for a 70.3 half Ironman, which I did earlier this year. So I was on my Cervelo S3 and my TT bike pretty much primarily for all that training. In lieu of that, I was also on my single-speed mountain bike getting ready for mountain bike-specific events in Xterra. So I only got to ride this a few times, and every time I did, I was not only hitting PRs with my times on my courses, but I've hit my max power of all time on this bicycle. I've done some of my fastest Strava PR times on this specific bicycle. So although it's not as aerodynamic as, say, my Cervelo S3, bottom line is this bike delivers the power. And it does that because it's really dialed in the rear end. I mean, the rear end is built seriously for pure speed. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, when I first got on the bike, I had a bit of a problem with it because I felt it was not as compliant as I was used to. And you can, again, see, just from the rear end here alone, just how thick and massive this is. You don't usually see this on many bikes these days. Usually you see these ultra-thin seat stays. And in this particular bike model, he has definitely not done that. He has flared them out, he has widened them up, and he's made them ultra thick. And when I first got on it, having come off so many Cervelo bikes, I actually was not a fan of the vertical compliance of the bicycle right away. The acceleration, the speed, cornering, platform, unbelievable. Best I've ever been on. Compliance, not so much. However, listen to me. I made a couple changes, just as you would on, say, a mountain bike, which I'll be reviewing for you soon, don't worry. I altered some of the tire pressures, and I changed my tire setup. I'm now running 25s on front and the rear, which I actually run 25s on all of my road bikes now. We can go over that in later detail in a different review. I'm running my pressure at about 95 to 100 PSI. Now at 187, 70 pounds, somewhere in there, sometimes down to 168. That's pretty low pressure. And let me tell you, the lower pressure with the wider tires on this bicycle changed everything. Everything. Not only did the stability continue to go up, but my speed and performance continue to go up as well. Now, I just put this bicycle against a monster challenge, which was Jeremy Power's Grand Fundo, which is up in western Massachusetts, which is where I train at all the time. That was my first real test to see how this bike would do, not just at fast speeds, descents, cornering, but more importantly, 20 miles worth out of 65 of undulating, crappy, Western Mass dirt roads, stuff that I love, and stuff that my cross bike is great at, my R3 is great at. How would this thing do? Let me tell you, this bike was an absolute gem on that day. Absolute incredible bicycle. I mean, I kept picking up acceleration more and more and more. The rear end finally started coming in to its own with a little bit lower tire pressure in the rear. Again, it's amazing how quick people are to judge a bike, the frame and the stability and the platform, vertical compliance, simply because they are judging it based on their tire pressure or wheel selection. Never forget that, my friends, is that a lot of times a bike can completely change just by changing the air pressure. Aside from that, the bike climbs like a demon. It comes in at a very scant, I think, 870 grams. I think fully rigged out with what you see right here. Okay, 25s front and rear with tubes. I'm not tubeless. SRAM red. Some light carbon componentries. As usual, my rotor 3D cranks and Aero key rings, which are a little bit heavier, but definitely a little bit beefier, which I like. And then, of course, I'm on a power tap in the rear, which of course adds quite a bit of weight. Fully rigged out, I'm at about 15 pounds, a very respectable 15 pounds with the power tap and with pedals. That's a pretty light bicycle, okay? You could easily get this bike under 14 if you really wanted to, and I'm sure many people do by tricking it out a lot more than I have. I like a little bit more durability in my bike based on how I ride. Let me just real quick go over the bottom bracket area, which of course is the heart of any bicycle. Now, this bike came to me with a BB30 setup. And unfortunately, I did not have at that time any BB30 crank. So the choice was to go out and spend my hard-earned dollar on a BB30 crank, which is not cheap, as you know, or get an adapter. Now, I spoke with the guy over there at Veloforma, and he said, no, please get a BB30 crank. So I spoke with my guys over at Rotor. Again, you guys know that I'm a partner with Rotor, which is why I run Rotor on everything, not just because I'm a partner, but because I love their products. And I said, hey, I've got a problem. I got a BB30, and I'm only got a 24mm spindle 3D cranks. I already own these. These were prior on my Cervelo S3, and I wanted to bring them over to this bicycle. And he said, well, we have a BB30 to 24 spin adapter. And when I talked with the guy at Veloforma, he said, yeah, you can give it a try, but our experience has been they're not any good. Well, let me tell you something. Not only is it good, this heart of the bicycle is just fantastic. The adapter is incredible. In fact, I believe it's Mark, that's the owner for Veloforma, got one and said this thing is highest quality he's ever seen, not just for an adapter, for a bottom bracket in general. I got, of course, the ceramic one. I'm a big believer in spending the extra money for ceramic over steel. Granted, they wear a little bit faster, but for the 3.5 years, if you're lucky to have it, it's worth it because the spin speed is just phenomenal. I love the low friction ceramic bearings. The cranks that went in there, ultra easy. And of course, one of the things that I want to point out, and you can hear this more and more, especially with BB30, you know, so many people are led to believe that, well, BB30 is all about stiffness. Well, it is, because we're increasing the spindle diameter from 24 to 30, which is definitely an increased stiffness. However, I want you to remember that really what happens here is when they build the bicycle, when they build it for BB30, they're reinforcing so much of the bottom bracket area with the carbon mold that you're getting the stiffness gain, really, already. So you always have to ask yourself, if you're going from a 24 spindle bike, which most of us are, to a BB30, a press fit, 30. I had the same problem with that bike over there. I'll talk to you about that one later. Same thing, I had to get an adapter for it. Does it take away from the bike? Tough to tell. It could, maybe like this much. But compared to like the $800 you have to spend extra to get a crankset, you gotta ask yourself the question. I mean, it's just that simple. And so far, maybe if I got into a BB30 on this, I would see a totally different bike, but that would be pretty hard to do. Right now, the bike is just dialed in. For me, the bike is a little bit more upright in geometry. Again, that's why I kind of explain it more as a Cannondale setup, as opposed to, like, again, if you look at my Cervelos, my S3, my R5, my R3, those bikes are a little bit more compact in geometry, so a little more back slope here. They fit a little more compact than this one does. This is still a size 54, for those of you that are questioning. And again, it comes in at a 15-pounder. I would highly recommend this bike for anyone doing serious road racing, crits, road races, hilly courses. This is your bike. Seriously, it is an awesome machine. And you may have actually heard of Veloforma before, especially if you're on the West Coast. Seattle, Portland, the big cyclocross areas, because Veloforma is really well known for their cross bikes. I can't wait to hopefully get my hands on one of them as well. You can go to veloforma.com. Tell them that I sent you from Cyclocore. I make nothing off referring you to them. I only refer products in this way because I believe in the company and I believe in what they're selling. Go check out they got a 29er over there. They've got a cross bike. I think they have got discounts for people doing team cross. If you have any questions for me about the bicycle, please let me know. To let you know, of course, this is Bike and Brew Review. As always, I am drinking the Big Red Beaver IPA, which is from Holyoke, Mass., which is one of the reasons that I chose the beer. In fact, it's actually one of my new beers. I haven't had this one before because the last ride that I did on this sucker was up there in just outside of Holyoke, up in Northampton and Southampton, Massachusetts, which, by the way, if you haven't been to Jeremy Powers' Grand Fundo, go to it next year. Seriously, he's got the 100K and he's got the 100-miler. And let me tell you something. These are epic rides. It is an epic ride. And the food and the attitude of Jeremy and all of his crew, kudos to you, man. You did an awesome job. Hope this review helps. Again, if you got any questions for me, let me know. Until we speak again, right with a smile on your face, drink only good quality beer, and I will talk to you later.